#org20. Take it away, Brittny.
Thank you so much, Alana. Welcome, folks. Really excited to be here joining you from Washington, D.C. Would have loved to see you all in person, but we're practicing social distancing because that's what smart folks do. So really excited to talk to y'all today with really exciting and amazing dynamic electeds in New York City. We have Assembly member for the 65th Assembly District, Yuh-Line Niou, and Jumaane Williams, the People's Advocate, the Public Advocate for New York City. And we'll be talking today about how they are using social media and digital organizing to connect with their constituents during this pandemic. Welcome, Assembly member. How are you?
Hi, so good to see you, Brittny.
It's good to see you as well. How are things going?
Things are okay. Things are tough in my district, but things are okay, and people are getting through.
Good. That's good to hear. And hopefully we'll get through all of this together. So I want to actually just jump right in because I think that for some of us, myself, I come from the field. And so I've always had a resistance to digital organizing because I feel like the most effective way is to knock on a door and have an in-person conversation with someone, right? But you know, this coronavirus pandemic has forced all of us to reevaluate the way that we view and use and tap into digital tools. And I'd love to hear a little bit about how this pandemic has impacted your interaction with your constituents, and just talk about what the most unexpected impact you have had to organize around would be.
So actually, you know, I'm with you on how we knock on doors, grab a clipboard, you know, get a pen, and that is how you organize. You knock on doors, you talk to people, you really get to know folks, and you know, get invited into their homes and talk to them about the things that we care about, all of us together. And I think that that's always been my style. And so this has been a very, very different change and shift in being able to interact, right? And especially when there are so many more needs and so many different issues that are popping up, it's hard to keep up. It really, really is. And there's so many folks who are left offline, which is very difficult because there are people who don't have internet access or can't actually, you know, I guess, integrate into that online system of doing things. They can't join a Zoom call, for example, and they can't start a conference online. But I think that one of the things that I really felt like was big was making sure that folks knew that we were still around and that we cared and that we were able to provide for them in a way that you know, was still the same as our office always was. So, you know, all of my staff have moved off to being remote. All of my campaign staff basically have, I mean, first off, campaigning is no longer the norm. I have really kind of just seized campaigning. All of my campaign resources have gone really to just making sure that people are all right. And so they've been joining the office side of things to be able to make sure that people are okay, that we are actually putting all of our digital into checking in on people. And so, you know, I have a very active Facebook account, and I also have a very active Twitter account. And I think that, you know, this is a way for folks to kind of also get messaging out to people. You know, it's been a very difficult thing to reach everyone, but we hope that neighbors will reach out to neighbors, and it'll be a very big word of mouth kind of help, right? Because, you know, it's been unexpected that I actually had a larger reach. I didn't even have over 1,000 followers 2 years ago. I didn't even work on my social media because I thought that it was, you know, so much more important to reach out person to person. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this is now our way of reaching out person to person. And my goal is to actually talk to people, you know, I guess in real time in a lot of ways. So when people ask me about unemployment online, when people talk to me about what they're going through, when somebody shows me a video of something that happened to them, I want to make sure I'm answering back to them myself. And I think that a lot of folks don't operate their own social media, but it's actually helped me to kind of keep up with what's going on in my district and what's going on with my constituents.
Okay. I mean, so what I'm hearing you say is that like you really emphasize maintaining that human connection digitally, because that's something that can get lost, and it's really important to maintain that. So give me an example of a way that you've pivoted to meet the needs of your diverse district during this moment, and how have folks been responsive?
So my district is very diverse. So a lot of folks probably know that my district is the best district in the world. Hands down, the truth. I like to brag about it a lot because we're the tip of Manhattan, and that is where all the exciting things happen. And I like to think of it as the birthplace of America as we know it. And just down my row house, like literally I am in the same row of row houses, walk-up buildings that is next to the Francis Tavern, which is where George Washington and the Culper Spies literally think about the American Revolution. And so
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy and kind of nuts, but in our shores stands our Statue of Liberty, and I think of us as like symbolically what people think of when they think of New York. And so, of course, it's the place where everyone immigrated as well. So this is a very diverse place, and it is one of the most beautiful, I think. And we have a third of my district is public housing, actually. And so, it's where the first public housing was really built. And I'm really proud of that. I also, know that people know that Wall Street stands in my district. The financial district is my district. The South Street Seaport, the historic South Street Seaport, which is gorgeous. And you guys should definitely come and visit. It is beautiful out there. I mean, don't come at once, right? We're not gathering.
Good point.
It's gorgeous out there. It's right along the waterfront. And we have the South Street Seaport Museum, which documents our history. And then we also have the Lower East Side, which I'm really proud of. And then, of course, Chinatown. So we have a very diverse racially and ethnically and socioeconomically diverse district. And so one of the things that, I have been always trying to do to make sure that folks get the services that they need is to listen. I think that it's really, really key to be listening to folks. And it's also really, really key to make sure that you're reaching out to where they're reaching out, right? Because it is so difficult to actually let folks understand that the issues that they're all caring about together are actually layered on top of one another and interconnected. And I think that really it's about understanding that part of policy, right? So when we're talking about housing policy, how is it that somebody in public housing and somebody in Section 8 housing and somebody who's in a Mitchell-Lama and somebody who is in affordable living and somebody who's in a luxury condo and somebody who's in a co-op, how do we all mesh together, and how do we all coexist as a city, and what are some of the issues that we all can agree on and some of the issues that we all disagree on, right? So we have to talk about, all of these different issues. And I think that is, it makes it so that when we're talking about one particular thing, which right now, for example, within this pandemic, is so crazy for people to make ends meet. People cannot make rent. 80% of New York is renters, and it is hard. It is hard for people to make rent. And what does it mean for somebody who's a homeowner? What does it mean for somebody who's a renter? What does it mean for somebody who's a small landlord who also meet when somebody can't pay rent? And so, these are all different things that we need to talk about as a community, and we need to be able to have a forum or medium to be able to discuss that in. And I think that it's really, really amazing for folks to be able to share all of their perspectives.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So you mentioned housing, and so for groups, and I've seen that groups are calling for folks to not pay rent and to take different actions and to protest. So how would you advise organizations that are mobilizing and trying to organize folks and during this pandemic on different issues? How would you advise them to engage with constituent groups, with your constituents, and how would you advise them to deal with you as a legislator? Because you all are carrying a lot, and I think I think folks aren't thinking about, people are putting out demands to you all without considering the weight that you're carrying in this moment, scrambling to make sure your districts are provided for and protected. It
is hard, but I think that for me, it's, I just want to know, because I can't help unless I know. And I think that that's one of the biggest things for me. It's like if somebody tells me and comes up to me and tells me like, this is something that I'm going through, actually talks to me about like why these things are difficult and what are some of the barriers that they're facing. Every single piece of, legislation, every bill that I write, every single thing that I've worked on my entire career has come from people and what they've gone through and the issues that they've gone through, whether it's consumer protection issue, whether somebody is taking advantage of them in the lending system, whether or not somebody is needing to have some kind of landlord-tenant, protection interaction, or whether or not somebody is going to need help with their, with their rent, and whether or not somebody is going to need help in the healthcare system. Like all of these different things, are things that add up, and I listen to what the stories are, and then I understand how to actually work on the policy issue. And so I think that one of the biggest things for me anyway is engaging at the level of where people think of the issue the most. I think it really comes very like, it's not like how would you say, it's not like it's like even planned out. Like I don't plan out I guess like what I'm tweeting, or maybe I should, but I don't really plan it out. I think that it comes out as just like who I am and what I'm doing, and because I know that it's just really like thinking about what other people are thinking about, like and so if I'm thinking about this thing, then other people must be thinking about it too. And I make that assumption, and I know that it's a little bit of an assumption, but I also know it's probably true, because if this is a thing that's kind of interesting to everybody who is worried about what's going on, then this is probably the thing that I need to be talking about with my constituents, and Absolutely. What I'm talking about with people, right? So if it's hitting me, then it's probably hitting them. So that's why I think of it in that way, and I try to be as transparent with myself, even though it's hard, because honestly, I never thought that this kind of leadership would be something that people even would think of as leadership on the larger scale. Providing this much transparency and this much access, I think, is a little bit different on a lot of levels, and a lot of people have said so. But I still remember when I spoke up about the Child Victims Act, and I talked about my own experience and what happened to me. I didn't realize that my telling my own story would make it so that other people could tell theirs. And so I think that the reason why I think it's so important for us to be this transparent.
Absolutely. And it's clear that you are meeting the moment and responding to it instead of furthering and continuing to do things in a way that you see fit, right? Because I think that the most effective electeds are ones who listen first and then act based on what they've learned. So because we're going to be wrapping up soon, but I want to ask you a question. I want you to share a quick, if you have an anecdotal story about social media outreach that has impacted a constituent, that has responded, happy, sad, otherwise, just so folks can see the real life impacts that social media has on folks in this moment.
Sure. So this is something that kind of started a little bit, it's like a weird story, because my friend Stephanie Wu in Boston, she also represents her Chinatown. And so she and I like talk a lot, and she was doing this, thing where she was like, oh, we should all go eat in Chinatown. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Mm-hmm. And they started this Dine in Chinatown hashtag that kind of like went across the nation, right? And for us, like I was like, okay, I'm going to do this Dine in Chinatown, and I'm going to do it like New York Eats, with my last name. And so I was like, New York Eats, and it's going to be this whole thing where people could understand that New York's Chinatown was actually hit the hardest during first, it wasn't even because of the actual virus. It was because of racism, right? Xenophobia, racism. And we started to see less foot traffic in our restaurants and in our stores by like 50% by mid-January. And so a lot of help. And so I wanted to make sure that folks were coming to Chinatown and to eat and to understand that that was a stereotype and that was racism and that wasn't actually at all true. Like there wasn't even a single case in New York City at the time, and there wasn't a single case in Chinatown, and there wasn't anybody who was getting sick from getting takeout from Chinatown. And so we wanted to make sure that people actually got to come out, and so we wanted to do this little thing, and people like it exploded. I didn't even know that it was going to explode, but a bunch of my activist friends actually got together and they put together something. So it was just Dine in Chinatown and we were all eating together, and it was so large. It was such a large, obnoxious group that we ended up, having to do it over and over again. But then there was something called Dumplings Against Hate that got together. And this is a group of activists. A lot of people have heard about it now, but they've already raised to date over $40,000 for in Chinatown. And this is just like, doing like small events and then doing a Zoom dinner date online. Like it was awesome. And it was so cool to see the organizing being able to happen online, that we were used to doing in person. And I think that it's also something that kind of spawned and grew. And now there's a lot of different folks who are using it as a way to amplify their voices as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Assemblymember Niou. It was a pleasure talking with you today. Continue to represent your district and advocate for your folks as you have. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to, as the Assembly member makes her way out, we're going to welcome the New York City Public Advocate, Jumaane Williams, or the People's Advocate, as we like to call him. Jumaane, how are you?
What's good? I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing well. I was watching your, if you don't know, today, this week is Black Maternal Health Week. And I was watching Jumaane earlier to participate in a conversation about Black maternal health, which is awesome because that's just what you do. So as I was talking, outside of that, right, I want to hear from you a little bit about how the pandemic has impacted your interaction with constituents and what has been the most unexpected impact that you felt, because you've always had a strong social media presence, and I just want to know how you kind of shifted a bit.
Well, first, thank you for putting this together. Thank everybody who's watching. This is amazing. As you mentioned, we've just really shifted how we're communicating with folks. And so I just want to send peace and blessings, love and light to everyone who's listening, all the essential workers and frontline workers who are out there risking themselves and their families. Just thank you so much as we get through this together. One New York, one country, alone together. But thank you for that. Yeah, it's been, it took a little while, I think, to get adjusted from when I did my first Zoom press conference a couple of days after the shelter in place. But I think it's become kind of a regular thing now. It's hard because I'm used to just being on the ground. I like to be where things are, making sure folks are all right. And so every now and again, to the chagrin of my fiance, I'm still out there. I get out there. I was out yesterday making sure that our drive-in centers and our walk-in centers were operating the way they were supposed to be. That, shockingly enough, is now the more awkward part. The uncomfortable part is actually going outside, having the mask on, having the gloves, making sure I'm doing everything correct, sanitizing everything when I come back home, because I don't want to put my family at risk. Getting groceries for my mother, my sister, who's a nurse, but she's immunosuppressed right now. Can't hug, can't kiss, dropping it and going. That, it's oddly enough, has become the more awkward part, and social media now has become the norm, so to speak. And I'm glad that we had a social media presence and we had some adaptability, so it wasn't as difficult to just jump in. But it's interesting now to see a lot of folks and a lot of elected officials and folks who I think may have been a little bit more resistant are now having to adapt to everything. So that's pretty interesting to watch.
Absolutely. I actually mentioned to the assembly member, I'm from the field, and so I'm always super resistant to organizing. I always say digital organizing is a piece of the whole plan, but you still need to get on the ground. But we've seen that you can still be effective, right? And so so tell me a little bit about a way that you've kind of shifted to meet, because you represent New York City, so you have a huge, diverse constituency, and folks have different needs. How have you reached out and connected with folks who weren't necessarily following you on social media before, or engaging on social media, but now have no other option?
Well, the most interesting part is our constituency service. Our constituency service is used to being in the office, taking walk-ins or what have you, and now we're completely remote. And so we have folks going and responding through email, and those are folks who may not be following me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Those are people who are calling in. We're responding to 100, 200 calls a day, and we're closing out those cases. And what I think needs to happen after this is we all, as a society, have to reassess who has to be in and who doesn't. Because right now we're seeing that we can't operate, and not everybody has to be in the office at the same time. And, it goes to a mental health thing for me. Like we as a society have always put a premium on working yourself silly. And we just have to rethink it. There are places and countries that have siestas, there are places that have 2-3 months off and still getting paid. We're fighting just to get paid vacation leave and things like that. But hopefully things will just rethink this. Like, do you need to be in the office 8 hours a day? Is there another way to gauge productivity? I'm hoping that is a big lesson that people are forced to rethink in government and in private, and kind of just help all of our stress and all of our mental anguish. We have a way, particularly people who are more privileged and are rich, really at a certain point it's just abusive the way we think, and force people to compete, to pretend that they are somehow more loyal because they're working 10 hours. Now I got to work 13. Absolutely. Now I got to work 14. Now I got to be home while I'm working with my family. So hopefully,
productivity is a myth, right? Yeah. So I think that's amazing, right? But so I know that you have been engaging with your constituents. I've watched some of your videos. I'm always checking you to see what's going on. You're
okay. Now I know.
In the city.
Checking us out.
So tell me a little bit about how you've been working with organizations that are mobilizing and engaging with your constituents, and how would you advise them to engage with their constituents in an effective way, and also how to engage with you and other legislators as well.
I mean, I will say this, to the extent that we have switched, it's great. Nothing beats a couple thousand people on the steps of City Hall or in the $1 million staircase. And I wish we had the ability to do that when the governor shoved this terrible budget down everybody's throat. And I wish we had the ability to do that as we're trying to save summer youth from this mayor who's trying to get rid of every single summer youth job. So what
tactics would you advise folks to use to shift, to pivot, so that they can be more effective? How do we move along and fight back in this moment?
So that I don't know if that necessarily is a one-for-one replacement. That's the gold standard, but we can't do that. But what we can do is what we have been doing is holding press events, press conferences on Zoom, on social media. The reporters themselves, you have to remember, they have families as well. They don't necessarily want to go to these, even if we were there. So they are responding to Zoom press conferences, as long as they're a link that makes sense. And we also have to continue doing what we have asked people to do and they didn't always do, which is after those big rallies, tie up these legislators' phones, tie up these legislators' emails, hammer them on their DMs, hammer them in their social media by the thousands. And more people are paying attention to that from the media world. So a campaign that is focused on the governor, focused on the mayor or other leaders will get a lot of attention. And at a time where everybody's paying to everything digital and the governor has an 87% approval rating, that's something that he's definitely going to pay attention to. So a coordinated effort to really push and directly on people's social media will have an effect.
Okay, nice, awesome. So I want you to share with us just one anecdote about a constituent or someone that reached out via social media, and what the impact that connection, that ability to connect, has changed their lives or impacted them during this crisis.
So I will say some of the biggest impacts around social media happened even before COVID. There's been a couple of things. One, when I shared my mental health experiences when I got elected last year, was just amazing. I didn't expect the outpouring. It seemed like someone was waiting for someone to talk about this who doesn't normally, particularly a Black male, speaking about mental health, not necessarily mental illness, but his own challenges of seeing therapy, talking about Tourette's syndrome. And the responses that I got was just amazing on being able to show a vulnerability. People saying that they used it when they saw, I put the video up on Twitter and on Instagram, teachers saying they use it to show their kids who were going through similar things. People with Tourette's reaching out, telling me how it affected them, has been truly amazing. There's a brother who just got elected upstate, in another state, who reached out just a few days ago to tell me, which I was shocked, I had an influence on him running, getting elected. So that's very humbling. It's just awesome to see how this reaches out to so many people.
Social media can be really effective when you use it right and you tap in and maintain that human connection, folks. So always keep that in mind. Jumaane, our public advocate, and our assembly member from the 65th District are phenomenal examples of what it takes to maintain that human connection, and your organizing, especially, and the importance of that in the digital realm is so key in this moment, because folks are really suffering and they go to social media and to these folks to find some hope and some answers. One last thing, thank you so much for your time, Jumaane.
No problem.
One quick action that folks can do if they want to support your district or your constituents, how can they get involved?
So one, we have a pretty good following, but we always are looking for more. So we're asking folks to join us on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. We give so many updates. I have legally, I have a personal one and I have an office one. So you should follow both so you can get the government side as well as the other things that we're doing. Right now, we need to focus on the city budget that's about to get passed, where they're trying to cut these summer youth jobs and others. So we're asking folks to focus on that, on your city council member, to make sure they don't do that. We're pushing a task force to be created to deal with the terrible leadership we've gotten, not just from the president, but from the governor and the mayor. That's me. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but that's me locally, why we've seen such disparate responses. We want this task force to act now, give funding and resources to the communities most affected. We don't need a study. We don't need understanding. We need action.
Okay. Thank you, folks. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, folks, for participating. You just wait for, I'm going to bring in Charles.
Peace and blessings.
Charles Lechner. Thanks. Thank you, Jumaane. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Charles is going to jump in, but if you could just wait for your session. The session should start when we are finished with the plenary. Then you all are free to go on to your respective sessions. Enjoy. Be safe, folks. Charles?
Hello, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for coming. We're really excited. This is our largest Organizing 2.0 since the tumultuous year of 2011. And thank you, Jumaane, for throwing down back in those days of Occupy Wall Street. I want folks to know that we're really doing our best with customer support, with making sure everyone can see and gets what they need. While this session was going on, I think I responded to about 20 people on email. Keep it coming. We're going to do everything we can so that folks have a good experience. I want to make sure that folks know that we are going to add another panel at the end of Saturday. We're lucky to have Claire Sandberg, who is one of the top staff on the Bernie Sanders campaign, talking about distributed organizing and being interviewed about that. And folks should also really pay attention to the sponsors and partners and everyone who's been part of the team helping to promote what we do. It's been really amazing. We couldn't possibly do it without you. And for everyone here who's new and sort of looking around, please know that this is a community, the digital organizing, progressive community, the labor community, and we're here to build that community. And everything you say to us and everything we say to you is with that in mind. We want to build relationships and do better. We're now in a time of COVID-19, which is really bad. So stay safe out there. Thank you.